Okay.
We're good?
Introduce us.
All right. This is the You Are Not an Artist podcast, co-hosted with myself, Alejandro Castañon, and my wife, Shelby Seymour. And we are going to be talking about phase 2.
Phase 2 today. We've made it through phase 1, and now for your streaming pleasure, we're talking about phase 2.
Phase 2. Yeah. If you don't know about what the phases are or what we're talking about, you can actually go to my website at alejandrocastañon.com, and you can find all the information about all the 3 phases. And you can also find more information on our other social channels like YouTube,
Twitter, LinkedIn,
Instagram,
everything that exists, we have content on.
Yeah. So if you need more information about that, then feel free to check out our website. But today we're actually going to be talking about phase 2 of the 3 phases. Mm-hmm. And we're going to kind of have like a discussion and a rundown of the things that go into phase 2. There are 3 things, right?
3 parts to phase 2.
3 parts, right.
Yes. So our 3 parts are 1, actually launching your business.
Yes.
So in phase 1, we built our foundation, created inventory, started getting ourselves out in the community. And now it's time to officially launch, brand yourself.
Yes.
Get all the legal stuff sorted out, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important.
Taxes.
It's like a shift in mindset that you've got to go from like completely creative to now being a little bit left-brained, right? Where you got to have to start thinking about the numbers and stuff. Yes, you're going to have
to be just as much of a business owner as you are an artist.
Right.
You're going to have to split down the middle.
Right. So, and then the next part of phase 2 is managing the business.
Yeah, so the next part, once you've launched your business, then we need to go into managing your business, which is all about kind of fine-tuning, finding a steady system. For you, it's different for every business owner that just makes fulfilling orders, doing all your commissions, creating work. It becomes a system, so that way you're not bogged down.
Correct.
Crying all day.
Yes. So it's something you can depend on that works.
Yeah.
And it's refined over time. So that's going to be managing business. And then the last part is going to be actually growing your business. So going from something that you're very familiar with doing and an expert at to where you can kind of pass it along to other people that can do those tasks for you. And, you know, you'll be well known, have a whole collector base.
So in part 3, you're really growing. So that way you're collecting more income strategies. You're a little more well-known. You have a hardcore marketing strategy out there pushing your name, so that way you can begin kind of touching into phase 3. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let us get into it. So let's start by talking about launching the business, and I think there are a couple things that we wanted to mention as like objectives for you guys to be shooting for when you're thinking about launching the business and you're ready to make that transition.
Right.
And so the first part of that is like marketing, understanding.
Right. So as you get into phase 2, you're still going to be doing the same things you did in phase 1. So developing your community is critical. Just because you got to phase 2 doesn't mean you get to stop.
Right.
It means you must ramp up your efforts to foster your community.
Right. So you have to like get to know your audience a little bit better, start kind of figuring out like who these people are. And, you know, and it's not because you want to paint for them. It's because you want to make sure that the people that are like them, that would also like your artwork, are getting a chance to see it.
Right.
So don't get it confused as to like, you know, well, I'm going to only paint what my audience likes. We want to avoid that. We want to make sure that you're still painting for yourself, but using that information about your audience to be able to have other people like them find you easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not tailoring yourself for your audience. You're tailoring your audience for yourself.
For yourself. Yeah.
So because they're all out there, you just have to know how to get to them.
Right. Yes. And then after that would be like...
Here comes the heavy-duty business stuff.
Yeah, the business stuff.
Understanding financials, which no one seems to like but me.
That's really important that you do before you even officially go into business, I think, because if you're not using your profits right and knowing how much to pay yourself and making sure you're replenishing supply costs. If you don't know all those things and you just jump into this art business, you won't know how the money is supposed to be used. And a lot of artists, what they do is they just, they pay for supplies and then they just pay themselves. But, business requires a little bit more understanding than that. So I think that if you're going to want to know about that, then you're going to want to know about cash flow statements, income statements, and balance sheets. So if that's a good place for you guys to start looking up those things.
And you're also going to want to take a hardcore look at your own personal finances. Because if you're bleeding money personally,
right,
it's going to be very hard for your business to grow because you're going to pull the money from your business just to pay the bills every month. And that screws a lot of artists over.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into a lot of other topics that I don't think artists have discussions about enough. Like it'd be interesting if every artist read like a Dave Ramsey book or Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like if an artist was required to read those like at some point in their career, I feel like it would make a huge impact on the way they treated their business.
It would make a huge impact for everyone.
For everybody, yeah. It's just anybody, any existing person that needs to read.
Anyway, everyone should know what a zero-sum budget is and how it magically changes your life.
Yes.
It makes your life a lot easier.
Yes, that's what those tools are really made for, is to make your life easier and then make your business easier to run so that you can focus on creating and not be stressed out all the time. So
because if you're stressed about paying your own bills or the business's bills, you're not going to grow and you're not going to create good art.
No, you'll be in pain all the time. I've done that before.
Speaking from personal
Yes, I've done that before. That's not the way to go. So that's the next part that you want to do and understand. And then after that is like choosing like a legal entity in order to operate as an official business.
Because you want to pay your taxes.
Yes, you're going to have to pay your taxes.
That can bite you in the ass very quickly.
Yeah, so you want to register. But the good part about being registered as a business is that you can claim your expenses to reduce your tax obligation, but you can't do that if you're not officially in business. You get what I'm saying? So, that's why those things are very important to do.
You also cannot get grants and credits.
Yeah, you're not qualified for those things because if you don't have an EIN number, then it's not as easy to get.
So there's benefits to both as much as you pay taxes.
Absolutely.
So then once you do that, you're going to want to figure out if you're going to have a brick and mortar.
Yes.
Or if you want to just be online based. And that's going to be dependent on a bunch of things. That's not just, I feel like, and you got stuck in this rut too.
Yes.
A lot of people think, if I have a physical location, I'm more successful. Yeah. And that's crap. Not because that you're wrong for thinking that. It's just that that's what it's portrayed as. Mm-hmm. We see that. It's because it's more tangible. We can. Right. Yeah. We feel like we have a name we have more of a name out there. But if you're in a place where you don't have a whole lot of tourism and there's not a lot of fresh blood coming in, you're probably going to be bleeding out. Yes. Because even as successful as your paint and sip was, eventually when you live in a small town, there's not new people coming in. Yeah. And they're like, oh, let's go downtown and see what there is. There's the same stuff. Yes. So if you don't have a brick and mortar is really beneficial if you live in a place that's got constant influx of new people. Mm-hmm. So a tourism site, Burnett, Texas is doing an amazing job. They're actually taking people from Austin on a train and shipping them in every Saturday. So that way their downtown is thriving. They also have a badass coffee shop if you ever find yourself in Burnett, Texas. But you really need to think about not how big is my town, but how constantly are new people coming in. Yeah. And kind of refreshing the area. Yeah, if it makes good business sense, then open a brick and mortar. If it's just for vanity reasons, then I don't think that's a good enough justification for you to have a physical location. Because with the way online retail works right now, and just in general at this point with Web 3.0, is that what we're we're about to be, yeah. Okay. At this point, you really don't need, I say this as us, we're making more money not having a brick and mortar place than when we have. Well, you're able to profit more and make your business grow faster if you don't have any overhead. Right.
You could focus on marketing more. You could focus on more creative projects because you'll have the budget for it. So there's a lot of advantages to it. I think you can reach a wider audience. If you just focus on online and make that really, really good and work for you, you can open up a lot more opportunities for yourself than just depending on a local spot to sustain you. Yeah.
So really focus on, and we'll hammer this to death eventually, but just think about your specific location. It's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So then the last part of this would be the legal. So then we're just launching your grand opening.
Yeah, you're doing a marketing.
That's just simply, you're already in business. You're simply telling people,
right,
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm official now.
Yeah, so you got to have a step for that. That's really important. Even if it's online, even if it's only online, you still have to have an official launch. It looks good just in general. I mean, I've never seen where like a grand opening official launch was a bad thing. And I think it just allows people to pay more attention to you. I mean, whenever you see in the headlines, new business, in downtown, like,
right,
that's an official launch PR publication. That's what you're going to want. So going along with an official launch, you do your contact your local radio station, send out invites, press releases, all that stuff.
Yeah, just let everyone know.
Yeah.
And that'll be good because if you're already fostering community, you're already doing local events. Mm-hmm. So all these people that you're doing these local events with, if you tell them they're officially launching, you've already been helping them out. They're going to want to then help you out.
Sure. It makes it easier. It makes it easier to approach them and they already know you. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, so that's the official.
So that's kind of the big step of phase 2 is launching yourself.
Launch your business, right.
Then we have the 2 cyclical parts. So you have managing your business and growing your business. And these 2 aren't quite the same as the rest of the curriculum where you can't just check them off and be like, I have managed and grown. Phase 3. It's not like that anymore. When you're in phase 2, the managing and growing your business is going to be cyclical, right? So you're going to manage your business, kind of prune it, figure out where you can save some money, where you can add some value, where you can kick up some revenue. And then you're going to grow, and you're going to add income strategies. Well, every time you add a strategy, sorry, your cats have the zooms. So every time you add income strategy or grow your business, you're going to have some trial and error. You're going to have some things you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So if you try to get on Etsy, you're going to have a learning curve for Etsy. And you're going to have to get used to, how do I ship? What programs do I use? Mm-hmm. Do I go to the post office and pay for postage, or do I use a shipping software? Every time you add an income strategy, it has a learning curve. So that when you grow, you go through that learning curve. And after you finish the learning curve, it's back to managing. Mm-hmm. So that way you can really make that learning curve efficient. Yeah. And then when you've made it efficient again, then you keep growing and you just keep going.
And there's going to be a lot of that at the very beginning.
A lot of it.
A lot.
And it doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human and there's no way to possibly know all these things.
Correct.
It's no business has ever gotten into it and then been like, I know exactly what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah.
There's always new things. There's always new software. People are always inventing new ways of interacting and selling things.
And I think that's the reason why phase 2 is probably the longest phase, because it's got so much growth in there. From just building your foundation and stuff that you really have to get familiar with that you're probably not familiar with. Like, for instance, like doing a YouTube channel or, stuff like that. Like, that's going to take time for you to build and learn how to do because they're important parts of the business. So it's okay that phase 2 is going to be long because there's just so much to learn.
Well, and to give you a bit of a time frame, we said 2 years in phase 1 if you are a well-established artist. Yeah. In terms of you've gone to art school or you've been creating art for a long time, you have a lot of technical skill. But I would say if you're wanting to become an artist, you haven't quite mastered it, that phase 1 could easily be anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then when you get into phase 2, you're looking at anywhere from 5 to 30 years. That's totally.
That makes sense.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean that was for me. I think that's right. When I was in one, I think I was there for 4 to 5 years. Yeah. Yeah. So so I think that's a good time.
Yeah. So this is not going to be something with phase to that you're going to be like, I'm going to get all these checklists and knock this out in 6 months. We're giving you a roadmap that's well into your career. This is
correct.
Up into 30 years from now.
Yeah, correct.
So please don't feel like you're failing, because this KK was done in 6 months. It's not meant to be done that quickly.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be fun, and you're going to learn a lot from it. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's okay. I wouldn't focus so much on the length. In fact, I think that the more time you spend in it just solidifies your where you're going to eventually be. I mean, if you continue the way you are, if it's taking 7 years, 11 years, you're going to be an artist for 30 years. 40
Absolutely.
years.
And this is kind of what makes artists artists. Are you willing to do the long haul?
Right.
Because you're not in it for, and then we'll talk about this a lot in the book.
Yeah.
Because to be an artist, you have to not consider yourself an artist.
Right.
So you can't think of yourself as, I have to be a successful artist and have this done in 5 years. You have to be okay with, yeah, I'm an artist and I do this art thing, but I may also be a teacher, and I may also be a tax accountant. And being an artist is just one of the things you love to do, and it's just part of your journey. And you may have other jobs that are part of the journey, but if you attach the idea of, I'm an artist, I must be successful, that's going to actually slow you down. You have to be okay with, I'm a lifelong artist, and I'll get there when I get there, because it's completely dependent on where you're at, your circumstances, luck, a shit ton of luck, and just depending on if a vacuum opens up in your medium, your niche, the internet, who knows what's going to be invented in the next 5 years. You may perfectly fall in line with that and explode. You didn't do anything. Right. It just happened.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't pay attention to like all the hype where you see like on social media or, whatever, where you see an artist that just suddenly has all these followers. I think that can really mess with you and make you feel like you should be on the same track.
Yeah.
But in actuality, that's a small number in the total. I mean, there's artists that we hear about now, but they've been doing it for like 25 years.
Right. The artists that you see exploding on social media, it's not because they necessarily merited that explosion, but because they happened to be in the right place at the right time. They got on Instagram in 2012. Yeah. And they happened to just understand hashtags right.
Yeah.
And rode the success of Instagram up. That's not because you suck. That's just because you tried to get on Instagram when it was dying. Yeah. So that's not your fault, but that's just the wave. Yeah. There's always going to be new things rising and falling. Yeah. And that's the luck part of it.
That's the luck part of it. Yeah.
And you just have to be secure and be like, I'm just in this to create art, and I'll get there eventually. Yeah. Because if you keep going, you're more statistically likely to hit it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, with that being said, this whole part being like in the managing your business includes all those things that we were just talking about. And that's really why it's so important for you to understand that, managing your business phase is so critical, because you can't really explode to this huge artist without having some sort of idea of how to run the business,
Absolutely. And that's where we've talked about that a lot. That art is not seen as an I can never say this word, entrepreneurial endeavor, but it 100% is. Yeah. And I feel like that's where I don't want to just say art school, but I would say a lot of schooling in general doesn't point you towards the business side. And that's where artists feel like they're failing. Yeah. They just don't understand the business side. Yeah. They need those skills.
I think the business side hits them by surprise.
Yes.
I think, not all artists go into it knowing that there's a business side to it.
Absolutely.
And then it suddenly hits them in one way or another, whether it's like because of taxes or, they're trying to figure out how to grow faster, grow more. Like there is a business part to it.
Right. And because when I started out doing art, I thought that the level of ability that I had would carry me to success. So if I only had good enough art, people would want to buy, places would want me to hang my art, and their restaurants, their bars, and their galleries. I thought that the success came from having good enough art. And now that I have done all this work with you, I realize that's completely backwards. It doesn't matter how good your art is. If you're not doing the business strategies, it doesn't matter how amazing your art is. It's never going to pop off.
Yeah.
And if someone does offer you, like a gallery, to sell your stuff, they're taking a huge piece out of it.
Yeah, I agree.
They're doing the hard work for you, and you might be getting screwed over in that.
Yeah, it completely depends on the place and how it's being run and all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're ready to get to that point where you're getting into the third part, which is growing,
scaling the business.
Right. So this is really, I really like, I always have a strong, like, positive feeling toward, like, phase 3, because it's kind of like a circle.
Part 3, not phase 3.
Part 3, sorry. Your growth of the business is like, being able to hit one of your main goals that you've set for yourself. Yeah. So the growing your business part is, I think it's a part where you've kind of like mastered a lot of skills.
Absolutely. So when you start growing your business, it's a good feeling. It's a love-hate relationship, because when you grow your business, you're going to feel like you suck, like you're starting over. Right. You're pushing your business into the boundary of the unknown. You're like, I don't know how to get on YouTube. I don't know how to sell on Etsy. I don't know how to print my art on t-shirts. And you're going to feel like you suck again, like you're starting over. And that actually stops a lot of people from growing, because they're like, I don't want to feel bad. I have suffered enough. I'm happy just being here. But it's a lot of suffering in terms of, you have to be okay with growing and feeling a little incompetent.
Yes.
And then when it hits and you really find a new niche, or you find a new market, and then not only does the money kick in, which is nice, but you get new followers who have new ideas, who are inspired in a different way, and your audience grows, and you realize your art's hitting in a different way.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's scary to grow your business, and it doesn't feel good in the same way working out doesn't necessarily feel good.
No, it doesn't. And then, there's like a relinquishment of control, I think, a little bit, when you get to that point where you're wanting to grow. I mean, it does, you can't scale yourself. I mean, if you could have another, like a copy of yourself doing the work, then that would make sense, but you can only do so much.
Correct. And that's why when we talk about growing your business, and it's cyclical, eventually you'll keep going, okay, I can scale back. If you are an artist and a teacher, maybe you only teach part-time. Maybe you teach at ASU rather than at the high school, so that way you can teach only a few classes. You start scaling back other jobs to focus more of yourself on your business, until it gets to the point where you're like, I can no longer run this by myself. It's growing too much. That's when you've pushed into phase 3, but we're not there yet.
Right, we're not there.
That's way in the future.
Yeah, we're not there.
But each time you grow your business, you'll have to, and you go from, I'm scaling my business, and you go back to managing the business. You'll have to reevaluate and say, is it time for me to invest more of myself and my time into the business? And each time you do that, you'll keep growing, because you'll have more time and more energy to put into the business, and that will foster more results. Till eventually you pop into phase 3, because there's just only so much time that you can devote, and you eventually need more people.
Yeah. And then, during this whole time, like, it's really important, and I learned throughout my career that it was really important to go back to what you were doing in phase 1. Because what ends up happening when you ramp up your business to a point where it's generating significant revenue for you, sometimes what you can get caught up in is painting for the trends, or painting for whatever you think is going to sell next, instead of just painting for the reason why you love painting, which is for yourself and whatever passion you're into.
And that happens to all creatives. Everyone fears, oh, it was a fluke. Maybe I got lucky once.
Yes. Yeah, I hit that. I had definitely hit that point.
And then you worry, okay, well, I don't want it to be a fluke. So you start backpedaling just a little bit, and you're like, I'll paint this one thing because I really like it, but I also know other people will. And then you keep going back to one day, you're like, why am I painting this? And that's not unique to artists. I finished that Robin Williams biography, and he had the same problem. He kept doing movies because he's like, every movie felt like it was a fluke. And even my greatest movies, I thought there's no way that was actually me. So he kept doing movies that he thought people would like. And he's like, and he would finally be like, I can't do this. I can't keep doing these movies that kill my soul. And when he backed off, he would have these amazing movies that we all know him for. But he also has shit movies, which were his movies, which were, I feel like I'm an imposter, and I did this hit movie. What if I can't do it again? And he would grab onto the first thing he could find, and he'd be miserable, and it wouldn't take off. And then he's like, "See, I knew I wasn't good enough." And then finally, when he would just let go, he'd grab those movies that
that's really hard. That's so hard to do.
Such a hard.
That's so hard to do.
Thing to think about.
Yeah, but it's hard to do in practice too. Like it's like when you get to a point, and I've hit this many times, where I saw a lot of success like consecutively for a little while, and then when it slowed down, I got panicked and just fell into the thing that got me there the first time. And that was always something that I wasn't necessarily interested in painting. It just was something I thought that would work. And then it happened so many times that I just got lost in that. And I didn't know how to get back to painting the things that I really enjoyed painting.
Oh, we've had that conversation a lot lately.
A lot, yeah.
And I think it's inevitable that an artist who also runs a business will fall into that.
Yes, yeah.
And we will talk about this in depth. You'll have to kind of have this renaissance for yourself where you're like, I see that I don't love what I'm creating. Or you get comfortable with what you're creating in the past.
Yeah.
You're like, this worked 10 years ago. This is what everyone knows me for. Everyone's comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Musicians do this to themselves.
Yeah.
And it kills them because everyone's like, why don't you create anything new? And so as an artist, you kind of have to toe this line between evolving yourself and keep growing, keep trying new techniques, find new things that inspire you, and move your art forward. Because if you just stay with what's comfortable, the people who love art are the people who love new things.
Right.
And if you've been the same for 10 years, you're traditional.
Yes.
You don't have that spark anymore.
Yeah. So
your job as an artist is to keep making yourself uncomfortable. I love that David Bowie quote. Always go to the edge of the pool where you can barely touch you can barely touch your toes.
What was it? You just posted that.
I just posted that
2 days ago. Yeah, it's on the feed. If you want to check that out, it's on the feed. It was a great video. We pulled it off TikTok, right?
Yeah.
That was a good video.
So that's really something. As well as trying to maintain this whole business, you've got to keep pushing yourself as an artist.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of makes being an artist a little bit more challenging, because normal businesses don't have issues with making the products better.
No, and that's what's so frustrating. And it seems like no one understands, because a business, all they have to do is order things. Like all they have to do is look at a manufacturer magazine and go, I want these 500 things.
Yeah.
And if 240 of those things don't work, they don't care. They didn't make them.
Yeah.
They sell them on clearance and order 240 different things that are new and trendy.
Yeah, it's Target. That's what Walmart does.
And so that doesn't hurt them. They didn't make those things. But as an artist, your 500 things, you made them all. When 240 of them don't work, it's painful.
Yeah, it sucks.
And you don't want to say those 240 aren't it. But you have to, does that make sense? You have to keep this balance between the two.
Yeah, I agree. That's a difficult thing to do, for sure. That's one of the hardest things to do. It's hard. But I think if you're honest with yourself and you really do want to honor your process and how you create, I think you have to have that kind of conversation with yourself. I did. I had to have that.
We had to have that conversation.
Yes.
It was
difficult.
It was a difficult phone call.
It was difficult, but it was really good. It made me happier. It made me much happier.
Right. Yeah. And I think you should, as an artist or as any creative, but since we're talking about artists, you should have two people you talk to. You should have one person you talk to who's a fellow artist who understands what it's like to be an artist, to evaluate your work. Yeah. Then you should have someone who is not an artist evaluate your work and see what they think about it. and you want two people who will be honest with you, not two people who will schmooze you, because you want both an artist perspective and be like, you can push yourself harder. You can refine this. I know you can do better than this.
Yes.
You also want a non-artist to be like, yeah, I get. You don't want to know if your art has gone too academic. You're not trying to be an academic artist. You're trying to be a business art. You're trying to be a professional artist. And so, if a non-artist can look at your work and be like, I don't get it, and it seems a little too intellectual, you've gone too academic.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's too, unless you're just trying to sell to academic artists, it might be a little too niche.
Interesting. That's a pretty deep discussion, though. That's a whole different discussion.
Yes,
we got to flesh that out. But for sure, yes, absolutely, yeah. So that's the end of the.
So we just to kind of refresh.
Yes.
This is us giving an overview into phase 2.
Right.
Yes. So this is kind of your introduction into phase 2.
Yeah.
The long 30-year.
Yes. Yeah. It's gonna be fun because there's a lot to learn.
Absolutely.
I think this is kind of when I was thinking about when we were doing all this. This is kind of like where when people are looking for like tips and tricks of how to like make their business better. There are more like this is kind of where we're going to be able to share not our tips and tricks, but just the things that work really well for us.
Right.
In that context, and I think that's really going to be a lot of useful information to have in running the business day to day, which I think a lot of people that are listening are probably somewhere in that point. And
absolutely, and anyone can tweak this advice to fit any creative business.
Sure.
So yeah. So just to give you a little recap, if you're new to our curriculum, we have a whole slew of this information on our website. So you can go to alejandrocastañon.com.
Ooh.
I said it right. And each podcast has a blog, a video that accompanies it, as well as a lesson overview.
Yeah.
So, and all of it's new. We never repeat information. So, and we've got each baby step of this entire process is recorded in the lesson. So if you find any of this interesting.
It's so well organized. Like it drives me crazy how like you did all that stuff. And she did a tremendous job on it. So it's amazing how organized it is. When you guys get there, you're not going to have a problem finding all the different phases and their blogs and YouTube videos. It's all very well organized. Yeah.
Yeah. So next week, the same time, we will be talking about part 1 of phase 2. So we'll be digging deep into launching your business.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions in particular on that you really want us to answer, feel free to DM us or shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to go deep into that.
Yeah,
so that way we can help you out because we're here for you guys.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
All right. Thank you guys. This was our first live. It was very fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Appreciate
it was like having like a third person sit in and just listen to us.
Yes, we're not just talking to ourselves and the cats.
It's the cats. Yes. It was nice. This was fun.
All right, guys. We will see you next week.